The day they fired me, it was 98 degrees in Dallas, and the heat felt personal. I remember the glass conference room. The skyline behind them, the way my reflection looked smaller than I felt inside. 3 executives sat across from me like judges. Richard Coleman didn't even look at me when he said the words. "We're restructuring." That was the corporate word for betrayal. I had built half their logistics software. I stayed late for years. Slept under my desk during product launches. Missed my mother's surgery because Richard said the client in Houston was more urgent. And now they were smiling. Not polite smiles. The kind you give when you've already decided someone doesn't matter. "We appreciate your contributions," the HR woman said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was a severance package that felt like hush money. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded. But when I stood up, I heard something behind me. Laughter. Soft. Careless. Like I was already gone. When I stepped outside onto Main Street, the sunlight burned my eyes. I stood there holding a cardboard box with my name written in black marker. 10 years of my life reduced to framed photos and a cracked coffee mug. My phone buzzed. An email. Company-wide announcement. After careful review, we've identified underperformance in key technical divisions. Underperformance. They used my name without using it. Everyone knew. Within a week, recruiters stopped calling. My LinkedIn messages dried up. Someone had quietly poisoned the well. I later found out Richard had told partners I was unstable under pressure. Unstable. I had carried that company through 2 failed audits and a cybersecurity breach. But rumors travel faster than truth in Texas. 2 months later, I lost my apartment in Uptown. I moved into a 1-bedroom off I-30, where the freeway noise never stopped. At night, I lay awake staring at water stains on the ceiling, replaying that laughter. It wasn't the job that broke me. It was the humiliation, the feeling of being erased. I stopped answering friends. Stopped shaving. I would drive past the old office sometimes, watching employees badge in through the front doors I helped secure. They looked proud. I looked disposable. One night, sitting at a cheap kitchen table with overdue bills spread out in front of me, something shifted. Not anger. Not rage. Clarity. They didn't fire me because I failed. They fired me because I knew too much. I had warned Richard about inflated projections. I told him pushing the Dallas expansion without proper infrastructure would crash the system within 2 years. He smiled back then too. "Don't be dramatic," he said. I wasn't dramatic. I was right. I opened my old laptop and started digging through archived files I had legally backed up, code versions, compliance emails, risk reports I had documented carefully. I wasn't reckless. I was meticulous. Every warning I gave was time-stamped. Every ignored vulnerability was in writing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted leverage. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself quietly. I freelanced small contracts, lived below my means, woke up at 5 a.m. every morning, ran along the Trinity River until my lungs burned. Pain felt cleaner than humiliation. I studied market reports at night. I watched their stock performance. I tracked their expansion moves into Austin and Phoenix. And just like I predicted, cracks started showing. Minor outages, customer complaints, a regional contract quietly terminated. But publicly, they kept smiling. I didn't reach out. I didn't expose anything. I waited. Patience is a weapon when everyone else is arrogant. Then one afternoon, almost 3 years after they walked me out, I got a call from a private equity firm based in Chicago. They were evaluating distressed tech assets in Texas. They mentioned my former company by name. Off the record, the partner asked, "You work there, right? What's really going on?" I stared out my apartment window at the freeway traffic. For the first time since that glass conference room, I smiled. And I told them the truth. The Chicago firm flew me out to their downtown office, where I presented a detailed breakdown of the company's hidden technical debt, showing them exactly where the system would collapse within 18 months. They began quietly shorting the company's stock while preparing a strategic acquisition plan, using my insider knowledge, legally documented, to position when a major data failure hit the Dallas servers during a summer heat surge. Exactly as I had once warned, the company's value dropped overnight. Richard went on local news blaming legacy engineering errors, indirectly pointing at the team I once led, but this time I had emails proving I had warned him repeatedly. The private equity firm moved in with a buyout offer framed as a rescue, and desperate shareholders pushed the board to accept as part of the acquisition conditions. They required a complete executive restructuring due to risk mismanagement. Walked back into the same glass building not as an employee, but as the new chief technology officer representing the acquiring firm. Richard sat across from me again, but this time his hands trembled as legal reviewed his negligence and the documented suppression of internal warnings. He resigned before termination could go public, escorted out quietly, his reputation permanently stained in the same business circles where he once blacklisted me. Didn't celebrate when the deal closed. There was no champagne, no speech, no dramatic applause, just a quiet moment after everyone left the conference room. The skyline of Dallas looked the same as it had the day they fired me. The same sun, the same glass towers, the same streets below, but I wasn't the same man. A week after Richard resigned, the board requested a formal internal review of past executive decisions. I didn't push for it. I didn't need to. The documentation spoke for itself. My archived reports, my ignored warnings, my risk projections that matched the exact failures that had cost the company millions. Everything was time-stamped. Everything was clean. The narrative shifted slowly in business circles. Articles started appearing online. Former executive ignored critical infrastructure warnings. Leadership failures behind Dallas tech collapse. No one mentioned my name at first. Then one columnist did. They called me the engineer who saw it coming. I didn't correct them. I didn't brag. I just kept rebuilding the company the right way. We stabilized the servers, paid off outstanding vendor debts, restored contracts that Richard had strained with arrogance. I rehired 2 developers who had been laid off during the chaos. When they walked back into the office, they looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Respect. One evening, months later, I received a message from an old colleague. A screenshot. Richard had tried to apply for a senior position at another firm in Houston. The offer was quietly withdrawn after due diligence. Reputation travels faster than truth in Texas. This time, it carried my silence with it. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't gloat. There was no dramatic confrontation in a parking garage. No shouting. No threats. Just consequences. One late Friday, I stayed behind after everyone left. I walked into the same glass conference room where they once slid a severance package across the table. I sat in Richard's old chair. For a moment, I allowed myself to remember that day, the cardboard box, the laughter, the freeway noise in my tiny apartment. The humiliation that almost convinced me I was nothing. I wasn't nothing. I was patient. I was disciplined. I was prepared. They laughed when I lost everything in Dallas. Years later, I owned the company that fired me. Not because I destroyed them, but because I outlasted them.